What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to go over the Mitsubishi FTO GP version R Nebula Edition, which is going to be part of the Motor Pass in the recent update. I have to admit, this car is actually pretty dope, and from the driving I've done with it so far, which obviously isn't that much because I've only done about 12 miles with it, which is basically like one race or so, I would say this car is going to be a little bit better than the regular one, which I did find this to be pretty interesting because normally the Motor Pass vehicles do tend to be a little bit better, and well, it seems like that's not going to be any different with the Mitsubishi here. So a few things I did want to go over real fast. First, you obviously cannot do anything to this vehicle because, well, it is kind of heavily customized, but if you would like to, you can actually buy the base version of this vehicle and customize it a good amount, but again, you will not be able to get it to actually look like this, so I would recommend going after the Nebula Edition. If you guys are a big fan of the version R, I would say this thing definitely looks better than the original. I really do like the color of those rims on there. I really do wish we can actually color the rims. I also really like the green going around the side with the carbon fiber, and surprisingly, the wing on this car does look pretty dang good. Not only that, we're also going to have really nice blue seats inside there, which I did notice you can actually color the seats in the regular car, which obviously you still can't get to look like this one. But besides that though, guys, I would say the FTO and the Motor Pass is probably going to be worth a look. I would say a lot of players are probably going to like this vehicle. Not only does this thing look really awesome, but luckily we can actually buy the Motor Pass with in-game money now, so we can actually test out some of these vehicles a little bit more, which I feel like a lot more players are probably going to grind out money and stuff to actually get the money to buy the Motor Pass, because I would say it's going to be a lot better with the way Ubisoft did this. I do want to mention, by the way, I will be doing videos on the Mazda RX-8 Pearl Edition and the Porsche Cayman Carbon Edition as well. You do actually have to buy those vehicles with real money. I will actually see if they're going to be worth it. But nonetheless though, guys, let's go do an outside look of the FTO right now and also take a closer look at the interior. Then we also have to do a quick top speed test just to see if this car is going to differ from the base model. So I figured for the version R, I would head back over to these salt flats to really test out this vehicle's speed, but also take a nice quick outside look of this vehicle. So I do have to admit, at nighttime I really do like how the colors of this car actually pop. Even the green on the skirt and then the front splitter there looks really cool. I really like how the side colors of the car also look pretty awesome. Like, look at the color of that. I would say they did a good job with it, and I feel like I'd speak for everybody when if you guys actually had a choice, you're most likely going to pick the one from the Motor Pass, including myself. I mean, this thing looks pretty sweet. It also sounds exactly like the regular one. And then moving over to the interior view of the FTO here, I would say the Nebula Edition is most likely going to be very similar to the regular one. We'll have the dials right there. One's going to be the battery again. Then we're also going to have the clock. Then obviously the dials on the dash there are going to move with the vehicle. I would say the biggest thing about this car, guys, is probably going to be those blue seats. I really do like how that looks with the color combination of this vehicle. On my regular version of this vehicle, I do believe my seats are red, so you can change the color of those. But besides that, there's really not much you can actually do to the interior of this vehicle. But now besides all that, let's go see what the top speed of the FTO actually is. So for the regular one was honestly very mind-blowing to me. That car is actually going to be like top 3 fastest street cars in the entire game, guys. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous how some of the vehicles are going to be a lot faster than other ones, but I did notice one thing when testing out the Nebula Edition that I'll get into more in the race here in a second is going to be the way this car might actually accelerate, because I do feel like it's kind of slow, but then again, this car is also apparently front wheel drive, which I can definitely see that after racing it a little bit. But when it comes to the top speed, I have a feeling this car is going to be very similar to the regular one. But one big difference though from actually driving this one compared to the base model is most likely going to be that handling. So let's see right now over this hill. Probably going to pass the other hill actually first, because if I don't, I'm most likely going to hit something going over it. I noticed getting up to top speed, you also have to kind of hit the nitrous a lot with this car, which you kind of blow through a lot of it. So right there, top speed run. Okay, 260, 261. So it looks like this car is going to be almost identical to the regular FTO, which I'm not really surprised about. Normally the cars are very similar. I know that one vehicle in the Motor Pass we had a couple of seasons back was actually slower than the base model. But from that top speed test, I would say the Nebula Edition is going to have the exact same top speed as the regular FTO, but for me what I really have noticed is the difference in handling. So from the testing I have done with the Nebula Edition so far, I would definitely say this car is going to have an edge on the base model. The main reason for that is I did notice the stability and handling on the Nebula to be a lot better. I was actually testing out the regular version R a bit. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of that vehicle for the most part because of the way it basically lost itself around all those turns, and it sometimes felt very unstable for that matter. Now, I do actually know this car is a front wheel drive, so that could be part of the reason, but don't get me wrong guys, I actually really do like front wheel drive cars, so I'm not hating on this thing. We obviously have the Civic Type R, and one of my favorite vehicles is also the Hyundai Elantra N. I always found that car to be pretty awesome with the way it sounded, but also a front wheel drive, handles similar to an all wheel drive vehicle, which is pretty incredible. I really do feel like cars have come a long way, but this thing is going to be from the 90s, so I wasn't actually expecting it to be like a race car, but I'm also really happy to see something as rare as the FTO in the game. I know someone mentioned in one of the comments of the videos that this car was in one of the other racing games a long time ago, so it's definitely going to be on the rare side. I would say one of the biggest takeaways compared to the regular version R is probably going to be the handling and stability of this vehicle. I highly recommend trying the Nebula Edition out guys and then jumping back into the other one. I really do feel like this car is going to be a lot better. The way I was flying around corners and actually gripping, I did find this car to be a lot more fun, but also more usable as well. Now, one thing I do have to admit though, would I actually pick the FTO for Summit Racing Indoor PvP? I would honestly have to say no, only because there's a lot of great options for those, and if you are going after the fastest time and or, actually trying to beat other players and stuff, I would say the version R is probably not going to be the best option. I wouldn't say the version R is going to be a really bad car, but more of the fact there's definitely going to be better vehicles you can choose for Summit's indoor PvP, but we can all admit the Nebula does look pretty sweet for the most part. But one other thing I did want to go over guys in this video is the fact that I did kind of notice the version R does struggle a bit past 200 miles an hour. I was finding myself hitting the nitrous a lot more than I think I should have been, and even with Nitro Chemist I was flying through the nitrous pretty quick, which I kind of understand that to a certain extent because of the insane high top speed on this vehicle, which probably would have been a lot better on some of the other cars in the game, but if I had to guess though, I would say that's probably going to be one of the ways they actually balance out the street class, because let's be honest, some of the cars are definitely going to be better than others. Some cars have good handling, some have higher top speed, like for example the Q60 has a lower top speed but incredible handling, so I definitely understand that. Nonetheless though, for me, I would say the biggest takeaway of the version R Nebula Edition is most likely going to be the better handling and stability compared to the regular version R. I really do feel like this car is going to be a lot better in that department. Now obviously the top speed is going to be the same, and from what I can see I would say the acceleration is going to be very similar. If I would say this car is going to have a big flaw, it's most likely going to be the way it accelerates and the fact that it does kind of struggle past 200, but besides that guys, we have a pretty awesome car in the Motor Pass here, and I would highly recommend taking a look at the Nebula Edition over the base version of this.